First for the death punishment of the year.
So we'll get started. So let me share the screen. Second. Right, so here we are. So today we do another lab. Just want to make sure that we remember to post the project proposals. So it's just either a PDF or a Google Doc of some sort. It's fine. And I think you saw what needs to be addressed for the project. So at this point, we're just trying to scope it. So just want to make sure that we catch early on any problem that could bug you down in terms of delivering the project. And most of it is really about the data sets. If you need to do any data wrangling on the data set, do you have the competencies? Do you know where to go get the data? What needs to be done? And that is informed a little bit by what you want to show. Okay. So I'll try to go over the project proposals this weekend, and then we can discuss them on Monday. And I'll try to give feedback to everyone, every group. Okay, so for today, we're going to do a lab. So this one is, I call it X because it's a little bit extra. So it's mostly, you'll see things that have to do with responsive charts and how to implement that in the browser. And we're going also to look for those who are not familiar with frameworks, about frameworks and how they work. Yeah, actually, I didn't pull up. Let's talk about the assignment, and then I'll pull up maybe the slides so we can look at them. So the assignment, so that we dispel any questions early on, it is basically the same thing as A5. And what I'm asking is that you take your graphic that you did in A5 and you put them into a view app. So there is one already in the repository. It's fine to use that one. As long as you use it maybe as recreating it as opposed to just putting your charts in there. So we're going to create one from scratch so you know how to do it. And then you have the sample code that you can reuse, obviously. Yeah, so if you run into trouble, obviously you have the option to duplicate it. So you can always duplicate. So you create another folder with the example, and you can restart from the example. It should be easy enough to do it step by step, and we're going to see how to do that. Yeah, and yeah, I think this is all. This looks all to me. The previous, Yeah, I thought I did update this. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me see in here. Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's good that I checked. Yeah, so I worked off the solution because I want to make sure that I don't send you to do stuff that isn't feasible and you out. So this is the actual one. So we'll update in the Slack. I think that the TA forgot to push that file. Hopefully, if we'll catch. So I'll go from the starter, and if I see anything else that is amiss, I'll let you know. So basically, again, just build a Vue.js dashboard. We want to create tables for each one of the things that we've been doing in A5. So you have the table and then different graphs. So for each type of graph, you can create a tab in the app and put your graphs in there. Yeah, that's basically it. And then I just ask that you implement a bootstrap grid. So that's very simple. And you can place some graphs in there as you like. Yeah, so the good development practices are always the same. It's about making sure that you do several commits so you don't get to the point where you get stuck with a bunch of errors and then you spend too much time to try to walk it back. And the app functions well is that we should be able to go in each one of the tabs and see the charts placed in there. Yeah. The other point of the exercise is that for the project, it's a group project. So I'm not going to require that you use Vue. If you know React, that's good enough. But this one, this homework is with Vue because for folks who are not familiar with any other framework, that is the probably the easiest to use. And so I'm giving you some starter code. I think I had some code also for Angular. So in case somebody wants to use Angular, and I think it's Angular 2, that is now version maybe 8, I don't know, but it's the latest one, but it's the second incarnation of Angular. But more or less the things are similar in terms of you would see how the to connect charts together in these frameworks and how to work with them. I don't have code for React, but my guess is that people who are familiar with React, they already quite know enough with a little bit of the Vue information here to make the parallel and adapt the concept to React in order to include the charts in there. Okay, so with this said, I'll you know what, maybe I should start here. Yeah, let me pull up the, let me pull up the lectures, okay. Four. Oh. Okay, that's weird. Okay. Lab X, here we go. Yeah, so I have some slides for Angular. I can share that offline, because otherwise I think that's going to confuse everybody else that is not familiar with Angular. So before we get to the frameworks, I have a little bit on accessibility, what that means. The concept that have to do with user experience, and then we'll get to responsive visualization. This part, ignore it for the moment. We might get back to it. This is for the final presentation. So the final presentation for the project is going to be a slideshow. And for the slideshow, we're going to use Inkscape and this thing that is called SOSI. And so this is just a demo of how to use it. But at that point, it's going to be the Pecha format that is basically pictures. So all you need to do is use Inkscape to put pictures around and then talk over it. So I'll skip that. Okay, so the main tool that you have that comes with the browser in order to that you can use to look at usability is this thing that is called Lighthouse. And so you get here for the inspector, and you see that there is here Lighthouse. So this allows you to basically generate reports where you can this tool is going to scan the page and tell you if the fonts are big enough, or if they're readable, if there is enough contrast with the colors that you're using, if accessibility information is present in the titles, etc. For people who use touch displays to read text, and so on. There are also things that have to do with search engine optimization there that is less relevant to us. But everything that has to do with color, fonts, etc., this is a good tool. So once you're done with the website, if you want to use the tool to as a QA, this tool as a QA system, then that could be something appropriate to do. And it's really self-explanatory. I'll get back to this one when we talk about colors in particular, because there are also some tools that are that allows you to simulate how vision deficient people are seeing the colors in the page, so you make sure that that they can actually access the information based on the colors that color scales that you're using. The responsive web design for chart has to do with adapting the display to the size. The graphic to the size of the display. And there are different techniques that you can use that I list here. So this is primarily useful because a lot of the information we access now is through mobile phones. And so usually when you build a dashboard, you do it for a desktop, but then you want to make sure that this is also accessible on the mobile phone. So especially for charts, there are different things that you can try to do to make the charts more useful on smaller size scale. And or when you change the size of the display. So if you do change the size of the display continuously, then one thing that you can do is continuously adapt the size of the chart, which with D3 you can do by redrawing. That's one way, but you have also other ways in which you can optimize the information based on the size. You can say change the form that you're using. So if the form that you're using takes too much space, then you will want to change it to something that takes less space, and you can either or do this by transitioning. So you can change to from a bar chart to a pie chart, letting people track the colors as you do that, so that they can track, say, the same categories. That's something that you know people have implemented it, and sometimes it's useful to do. You can also change just the form that you're using. So you can go from a bar chart to a lollipop chart because you don't have enough space. And so we're going to see an example of how to do this in the lab. Obviously, there are other things that you need to do for everything else around the chart, which includes the text, the legend, and the axis. And that's taken care if you're do that by CSS, basically, where you can set up the CSS not to use absolute pixel, say, size for the fonts, but to use something that is relative to the size of or the width or the height of the display. So automatically the font will be scaled by the browser. You don't need to worry about it. So, and we're going to see how to do that, to change basically the units that are used for the fonts and other text that goes in the graphics. The last example, the last thing that you can do, and we're going to see an example of that, is adapt the data. So if you have a massive data set, then you can ask with D3 or any other tool to just pull the data and put in a screen, but it's going to take a long time. In the meantime, the user is stuck waiting to a blank page. And there is so much real estate that you can play with. So if your data points, say you're doing a scatter plot and you have more points than pixels that you have on your screen, then you're just going to end up with a visualization that is useless for the user, because most of the data will be either overwritten from overplotting or just not visible because you cannot fit it on the size of the display, right? So the way to deal with that is obviously to serve the data dynamically, or to do on the browser, adapt the amount of data that you're going to display based on the size that you have. So typically, if you're going to do a line chart, there are so many data points that are going to be useful, past which the line itself will not change, right, in terms of its visual appearance. So there, what you can do is subsample the data. So it's going to render much faster. And if you need to still let the user interact with the data, then there is the interactivity that can allow you to zoom in, right? And so if you think in some of the tools, they have this mechanism such as brushing, where you can go and select part of the graphic, so you can use that for zooming in part of the data. And there you can adapt the resolution function of the size of the display. So yeah, so those are D3, because we've been talking about D3, gives you the option to build them in. Obviously, now you know that those mechanisms are going to be built out of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And D3, the only thing that it does is that it's going to allow you to modify the graphic. So that's going to be quite complicated. But if you do a custom tool that needs a custom visualization, then that's basically your only choice. And then there, the way to do it is really to try to find what is the closest example from D3 that is available, and then take it from there. Other tools such as Plotly, they have already some of this interactivity built in. And there, the only thing that you need to do is know how to use the chart. Because a lot of those are just chart typologies where you specify the type of chart that you want to use. But that limits your ability to customize the visualization. Frameworks. So as soon as you want to do something a little bit more complicated than just a page, such as we've been doing in the homework, then you need to start writing a lot of code to basically do the layout of the page and or navigation, because you'll want maybe to have multiple tabs that are accessible with different content in each one of the pages. You can do this with vanilla JavaScript, but that gets quickly complicated, and you end up redoing in each one of the page more or less the same type of things that you're doing, say, for the home page, and that makes it difficult to maintain the code, and also just time-consuming to put together, right? Now, what the frameworks do, and that includes the Vue, Angular, React, and there are others that are out there, is basically give you a blueprint for doing most of the things that you need to do in a complex website, such as a dashboard, and basically create the shortcut to your data, so that you can populate those pages quickly, and end up with a website that reuses the code throughout the pages, so you limit the duplication. Now, I'm sorry. Now, the way they work is that you basically craft something that is similar to most of them, to a page, to HTML. And the framework gives you some way to control what is going to be useful to map your data into that HTML. So that you'll see the example with Vue. That's very, very simple because it's all in one file. And the way that works is that basically the framework takes that as an input and processes those shortcuts that allows you to control the page, both style and behavior, and generates as an output JavaScript and HTML page that has all your site together, ready to basically be shipped to the outside world. That means that whenever the HTML is generated, you get the minified version of everything. So that's not for you to go and change things anymore. You change things always in the input of those frameworks. And then you use the similar functionality to what we've been using in the homework, that is the browser sync, to develop so that you see what is happening as you change the code. But what they're doing is really recreating the page at each point in time. Yeah. Now, that also means that if you want to debug it, you need to tell it to do it in such a way that there is a mapping between the code that is generated and the original HTML-like structure that you're passing as input, because that's what you have to work for, right? And so most of the time you need to say it explicitly. Otherwise, you just can see in the browser the jumble mumble of what the framework outputs. So the idea really is that the framework is some shell where you go and place your code. So think about, you have a starter setup that gives you a minimal website, and then you can extend it with different pages. And in each one of the pages, you have a place to go and put your content that is already created. So the benefit is that you write less code and you focus on what you really want to do, as opposed to spending your time on the rest of the website. So the picture there is just to say that to compare the amount of code that you would use and how you would write it between a library and a framework. So a library such as D3, you will end up writing using parts of the library in a lot of places to write your code. In a framework, you're going to put your code at specific locations only, okay? So you need to understand a little bit what those locations are and what they do. And then it gets easier from there. Yeah, I don't know what is my NB there. Oh, this is, I guess, an example of setting the size to control the graphic. That's a bit behind the point. So all these frameworks, they refer to web components or components as blocks that are usually reusable that you can use in web pages. So for us, what that means is that with this capability, we can create a chart and then reuse it in different places with different data. So you get reusable charts, okay? So as I mentioned, all of these, they have something that has to do with how the page looks, and that is usually referred to as the view. Then something that has to do with your data, and that's referred to as the model, and some type of JavaScript code that is going to connect both, and that's referred to as the controller. And the model that of programming in this way is it's based on the original, that is the model view controller. So this is for a little bit more the time, that is the model that Angular is using, where they call the controller the view model. But really it's more of the same. Yeah, and then we're going to move to the lab, where basically we're going to see examples of these things and hopefully get to understand how they work. Okay, so I'll go back here. Yeah, so I was thinking to go of my solution here. So you can tell me if something else is different. So you start off with the right things. Okay, so we'll start with the lab. We have the example 0 here. Okay, so now you see that is that right? We lab. Yeah, so there is no package.json at the higher level because we have the apps that have their own. So this one I created as an example. We're going to redo it. The apps they have their own package. So for the lab, it's in here. And so you need to do cd the lab, and then to do the npm install, which I did already. Yeah, which still has probably some packages that are old. I think I tried to upgrade them, but I may not have finished. npm run serve. So yeah, maybe I can tell you that. So especially if you're going to reuse the app and or you know, some, yeah, if you reuse some of these, and so some of the packages are old, so the easiest way to upgrade them or downgrade them is to remove the node modules, and then you do npm uninstall, npm install, or you just go in the package.json, you remove, say here, bootstrap, and then you do an npm install. Yeah, npm install bootstrap. So same thing for the 3 year. This was last year version. I think it was 6 and something. So now you see that it's version 7. So I upgraded it yesterday. Yeah, and then we do the npm serve, and we should be able to see the ex0. Okay. So this one is very simple. It's just, most of these are going to be cut and paste because we're going just to try to understand how things work as an example. And they require very little changes in the code. But it's I think it's better than to try to give you this information in a slide, and this is a little bit more interactive. Okay, so here we're going to see how to set the font sizes and resize bars dynamically with the size of the display. So for the text, you see what is said here is to use not pixel coordinates as we have here in the code, because this is going to be always the same, but relative coordinates respect to the viewport, that is the width of the browser window in which you're rendering. And these are fractions of one. So of a percent, sorry. So here one viewport width, that's a shortcut for W. You have the same for the height. Says that you have 1% of the width of the whole viewport. So if you want to size a chart to 10%, you would do 10 VW. So here the exercise is just about applying this resizing so that we make it such that the text will resize according to the viewport, and also the bars that are, I think, here done with HTML, such that the largest bar, I think this is the largest. So these are COVID counts from last year, such that the largest bar corresponds to 78% of the width of the viewport. So the code is here, and I put the little backpack here for things that you need to do. And now to compute, obviously, you can use anything in your desktop, including including the console, because in JavaScript you can just do simple math with that. And I give you there the formula that is just a proportional rule to size the bars to the 78% as an example. Right, so you can just take this and if I'm trying to get this here, console, and here we go. You get the result that is 50.72. So this is going to be and we want it probably in relative units. Yeah, because you see here the widths of the bars are in pixels, and we want to make it relative. So we need to do 50.72 VW, and that should take us there. And then obviously this is the largest bar, so we need to rescale the others accordingly. Does that make sense? So once you have this one, then you need to do the calculation, which is you can use the same rule, right? As here, and you need to size it to this number. And yeah, this one is the one for the 78 that we want the 50 pixels, but otherwise you need to use the other numbers in thousands without the comma, obviously. And so this is what we get. And you can see that when you resize both the text and the graphic, they resize accordingly. Yeah. So what I suggest is that I can show you the code because it's quick to do. So you can try maybe with the first one. Which one is it? Oh, I'm sorry. This is the character. This is my picture that we don't need anymore. It's here, example 0. We can go down here. Yeah, so this is the sample, and yeah, here you see these things that are resized to for the size we're setting 1.5. And this you need to experiment because that depends of how big you want the text, right? And it's going to be in proportion to the size, to the height of the bars, because that doesn't change. And here is so the tallest bar is 78%, and then you need to recompute the others. Oh, sorry, it was this one. Yeah. So this one we set to 78%, and then we need to recompute the percentage for this one, and that is the number that we saw in the console a moment ago, right? That is based on the proportion of this number based on the tallest one here, that is Los Angeles, that we want to be 78%. All right, so there you just you can get this done quickly, so we're going to go to the second one. Okay, so this is a responsive line, spark line, meaning that at some point we're going to switch from one to the other. So that means that in the code there is a threshold, and then we do either a line chart, which we have done I think last week, or we do a spark line that we do here. And so to see it, I think you need to, yeah, so you see, so this page, so all of these are done with D3. So you need to install D3 in the page. which probably is needed because it's not in the package.json. Let's go look at it. So yeah, this is the solution. So I've installed it. If you don't have it, if you have it, it means that it shouldn't be there. But if you have it, then you can skip that step. And then you want to implement the code that is here, the line sparkline.js. And the associated CSS in the page. So those you know how to do it, right? You include the JavaScript and the CSS in the page, and then you just need to call the chart, right? And I can show you how this is done, but it's obviously very simple. Let's go look here at the sparkline. So here I have the sparkline. Obviously, we need to set it into something. So we need to put some of this, and I think that yeah, this you get the clue right from this file. Right, so this is similar to the code that we've seen last time. So we load this with D3 CSV. We need to convert things because these are the stock data. The close, the date is a date, and the close is a number. So we're using this, and the year is just a format function that does the time parsing. And this is D3 that allows you to format time based on these strings. And I think we saw the example already last week, right? So there is nothing new. So here I put this explains. I think you should go and write something for you to just say what this is. So this is the margin convention, right? I don't oh, here the nice is there, yeah. So this is a int that you can say, and the documentation is there for continuous nice. This allows you to adapt the domain of your scale so that it appears nicely. Because sometimes you want there is the tick mark at the 0, and you probably don't want it. Otherwise, you get these 2 tick marks for the X and Y axis. And then where the endpoint is might not be styled as you expected. And this nice tries to find a good compromise. So here you want just to try out the different nice function and see what happens on the 2 different scales and how it changes, because sometimes it's useful to add it. Here I think that everybody is now understanding what this is. Here we're using the extent that we looked at the last time, right? As opposed to use the min and the max. Here we're setting up the axes. That is this ensemble of objects that include the tick marks and the labels. So we need to create this with a group, and that's the pattern of that we've been using for the axes. And here is the pattern for drawing the axes and configuring the axes. I think in this one there is a little bit of playing around here with the transformation so that the text, where is it? Yeah, here you see the price. The text is rotated. And so this is the code that does the rotation. Here we do a rotation by 90%, 90 degrees. The rotation needs to happen around an angle, a center point. And so you need to tinker a little bit with the settings so that you get the text where you want it. Yeah. And the rotation uses the text anchor set at the end. So that's the point that we're using to rotate around. Okay, so here is just is doing some math to filter, to sample the data, and that is because we have too much data here for the size of the display. So we need to decide how many pixels we want based on the size, and then we filter the data set based on that. So the data filter is just a D3 array filter function. You see that returns if the specified return value is true, it will keep the value, and otherwise it will not. It will drop it. Is that true that this D3 array, by the way? And not, I think this is just, oh, no, yeah, this is the D3 array because we have D and I. There is also a filter for array, but this one is, is it the case? I don't know. Yeah, we should. So we are, I mean, our data is just an array. Yeah, I think this is wrong. It's just it's so here we just have an array, and we're using the filter function that is stored from JavaScript. It does the same thing as D3, where we get the D and the I. Right. So here we do the same thing that we did last time with the sample data, where the line is just one all pass, and so we just want to put it at once. So we append the pass, and we say the data for this pass is the sample, and the sample contains the D parameter of the pass variable that sets the pass instruction to draw the pass. And this is from the CSS, the curve, and so on. So the rest, I think, is mostly yeah. So this is a trick here to. So when you set a display to none to one element, the display is still in the page. Sorry, the element is still in the page, but is not going to be visible. Okay, display none. And see here, what we're doing is that we're hiding this group that is of class last. Last record close. And this is the text with the circle and another text at the end. And I think this has to do with when we get so is this points. This one at the end is the last. So it's a dot with the value in the spark line, so you can read it at once. So here we've subsampled the points in the line, and you see here the number. And we're showing the values at the start and the stop. Oftentimes, what people do together with this is that they implement interaction where you can move around the curve, and you can read the value under the cursor. And then that's called a spark line. Both interactive and non-interactive versions, obviously. So the display none there is set here, so that you see that the dots and the values disappear. Okay, and this is resizing because obviously we need to resize the chart and we need to resize the scales each time we scale the display. And so we need to redraw the axis and the lines. And so this is the code that does it. So you see it's complicated. That's why I give you the code. I'm not going to ask you to redo it. But at least you have a template to follow and an example if you want to implement something similar. And I think this is calling chart. Yeah. So that's why we added in the page the chart, right? So that's the only thing you want to include the JavaScript and look in here for what is the ID that is being used. And this is similar to what you have been doing up until now, I guess. So this is one. So the two is more of the same. Here we have another responsive chart. So let's see what happens with this one. If we go lower, so you see the axes are removed. Then we change the labels. Then we make them more compact, right? Because here you can read the value of the bars with the y-axis, but as we remove the bar, then you need to be able to read the values. And so here the choice was to put them at the bottom. You could put it on top if you want. That depends really of what is it that you want to show. Here we're putting all of them, and that allows to compare. But if the information that you want to put is which one is the tallest, which one is the smallest, then you can also just label those and or sort the bars, right? Because if things are sorted, then because here if the information of size and comparing sizes is important, then it would probably be better, at least at the size of display, if you sort the bars so that there is not much work that people need to do. Even though that there is probably things are ordered here and based on distance to the sun, so the ordering has a meaning. Yeah, so we'll do a quick break, and then if you want, we can take a look at the code that is basically similar with bars, and we should see how to in this code here so again, this is chart because you only have one the page, so that works. Here we're loading the data as TSV. Yeah, we need to be careful with the types. So we're doing this. The margin convention. Here you see that we're doing something where we select the chart and we set the attributes for width and height. So you remember you have the choice to either put it directly in a div where in a SVG that you size. But when you use the margin convention, you want to do it dynamically. And so the whole code here for the margin convention is there. So here we're using the domain by remapping the data. And we just want to create it based on the name and because it's a categorical axis because we're doing bars. So that's the x-axis, and we saw this last week. This one is numerical, so we go from 0 to a max here. Why do we want the 0? Because in this particular case, we want the x-axis 0 to start somewhere there, and oh, sorry, the y-axis to start at 0. you know, we could start where Pluto is, but then you wouldn't see the bar. So that's why. So here using the mean, it doesn't make sense. Here you see that we're using the nice. So once you see how it works, you may want to go and remove this to see what happens. The rest is more or less the same. Here we do the data join for the bars, which is straightforward with setting the color for them. We do another data join for the names. Those are the labels that appear at the bottom. And that's it. And then you see that so this is similar to the previous code. So when we get the data, we do a first draw. And then when there is a resize in the viewport, we need to resize it. And where is it? It's right here. And so to resize, and this I didn't say it earlier, but it's the same mechanism. You're asking the browser to tell you when there is a resize event. So we're going to see how to play with events soon. But basically here we're saying, hey, main window, when you get a resize event, call the resize function. And the resize function is going to redraw the chart. And we're not restarting from scratch, but we're just changing when needs to be redrawn. Yeah. And here is the threshold to decide if we do one type of chart or the other type of chart. Yeah. So there probably we decide that we want to hide the axis. You see, so setting the display to initial resets it to the first time it was set up, I think, in the page. That is where we first drew the axis. And otherwise we switch it to none. And here yeah, it's in the other way, it's in the else. But here what we're doing is that we're hiding based on class the axis. Right, so it's a little bit tedious to go around and get all this information and set up things as you would expect. But if you have an example and you have the layout of how to do it, that's the way to do. What is hard with these is really to, if you want to start doing it from scratch, even if you have the code for the bar, you need to know how to set it up with the resize function so that it works the correct way. And this is a good pattern here. So if you want, we make a quick break and then we'll resume with the rest. All right. So yeah, there was a question about the viewport units here for the text. So those they're defined by the W3 standard for HTML sizing. There should be some documentation at the W3 website for this. And here you see that you see the effect of changing from pixels to viewport width to viewport height. So one is relative to the width of the page, the other one is relative to the height of the page. Here we have a very tall page, so the text appears smaller. Okay, there was another question about if you don't set the initial width and height for the SVG, then you get the default. That is, I don't know which size, but apparently it's, is that the other one? No, this is not the bar chart. We're looking at the line chart, sorry. Is here. So if you don't set the initial viewport size, then I think it was at 200 somewhere. Here it is. So here we decide what we draw depending on the width and height with two thresholds. So if you don't set it, then you will end up with a spark line, even though the page is very large. And that is probably because then the comparison here also fades because width and height are undefined. So we get in this case. Yeah, so you'll want to set the width and height in pixels. So for this example, it's not in relative units, because here we're sizing the SVG, not text. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look at the third one now, or I don't know if it was the fourth. So this is more or less the same as the other bar, but this one does the lollipop chart. And I need to minimize this so that we can see it. Okay, so here is also the same based on threshold. And there is a point where it's too small to even do bars, so we do a lollipop. Okay, so and that's obviously easy to do. You just need to put multiple data joins for the dots, for the bars, for the text, and you should be done with the same threshold, and that does it. We can quickly look at the code if you want. So you see here, I'm just putting the width and height. So I'm not saying the units here because the default is in pixels. You could use percentages if somebody was trying. And that should work too, but maybe yeah, you want to make sure that you don't push it beyond the threshold that makes it a lollipop chart if it's a big page. Yeah, so it's basically the same. See exactly the same structure. We do multiple data join here for each one of the pieces. And then we draw a first time things that yeah, that need to be drawn, and then when we resize, we just resize. We don't add new elements. We just resize them. And here you have the code for that. Yeah, if else, and I think that's it. And then we show or hide things accordingly. So this one is the idea of the reusable chart. So here the idea is that we do a line chart, and then we want to use it multiple times with different data. So we create one with, you see, this data set, and another one with this other data set. Notice that the axes, they adapt automatically, and that's because D3 does this for you. So if it's less than, where is it here, a year, so it's not going to restart to put the following year, 2010, after, because it's over, but it just puts December. So so that you can change if you don't like, but this might be an artifact of not using the nice. You see here, we get this these two dots here, that two bars that come right one after another. That's something that you don't like usually to see. Yeah, and the aesthetics, obviously. So this is an area chart because the area is filled. But yeah, the aesthetics are fixed between the two. So the color is exactly the same. So they probably are coded in this area chart.js. So we can go look at it. It's right here. So as usual, the setting of the margin convention, we're calling it a little bit differently than usual, but that's more or less similar. You see here the background color is a variable. So here I'm creating a function and basically encapsulating everything inside the function so that I can just call it, and it should work the same. And because functions are you know first class, then I can put a function inside a function. We saw this doing the closure thing. And this particular one is just a closure to encapsulate the parameters that I want to be frozen and or passing. And then the inner one is the one that does the plotting. And we have others that are used to configure it. And I think we saw this pattern already. The rest here is to return the chart. Remember, we saw this early on. We want to return the this reference so that we can use chaining. Right? So we can say chart.margin, chart.width.height, and it will work automatically. Right? The rest is this is the closure pattern to encapsulate things that the user should not worry about. And so, and the way you use it, so this was example 4, I think. Right, 4, the example 4, yes. Chart, I think those you already have. So you just need to include the chart. And I think you have some starter code to show it, right? Where is it? Okay, use the yeah. Okay, maybe not. Yeah. Do you have this code, or this is something that you need to write? You have this code? Yes or no? No? Okay. So yeah, if somebody can Slack me, we'll need to send you this, because it's, I mean, it's not complicated, but if you don't know it, there is no point that you spend the time, right? So here we're just, and you're familiar with this, we're loading the data with CSV. Obviously, you need to go and look at the format for the time, and in this particular case, this is what you need to use to parse the time. Again, if you don't know the format, you need to go look at the documentation for time parse and match what works for your data. And then we instantiate our reusable chart. So this is the pattern that we saw with the closure that returns the inner function. And that is the one that we're configuring using the chaining syntax. So every one of these functions is going to return this, similar to how D3 is working. And we say chart.x, we set up the here the data for X. Here we set up the data for Y, and then we set width and height, and we set up the margin if we want to override the defaults that are in there, and the background color. And then we do the drawing more or less similar to how you do it, how we saw you do it with passing the pass element as the data, the D attribute, right? And then we do a dot call from D3. You remember that dot call is execute this function chart. So this is going to go inside the chart that is actually realizing doing the plot. Okay. So that's one way. If you want to create a reusable D3 chart, this is a nice way to encapsulate it. And this one is basically the same thing with different time data that I think we already used a couple of times at this point. So here I'm using, obviously, you know, the long form of the functions, but I can as well just write this, and here we go, and then this should work as well, right? Yep. So that's basically it. So this obviously you won't invent because you need to understand. So this is like creating another D3 library. So in this particular case, because there is no documentation and nobody to tell you about, you need to go and look how it works, which we just did, so we know that we can use those parameters to configure it with the chaining syntax, right? But you don't want to start writing this from scratch. So that's why I'm saying that you should have the code for this. This one I'm not sure. Responsive grid layout, yes. D5. Okay, so the D5 is to basically go to this one that hopefully is going to open. No, okay, this one should open in a different window. Sorry, opening in your tab. So these examples I did with Bootstrap 4.5 last year because the version 5 was not out, and now the version 5 is out. If you want, you can upgrade for this particular example. If you want, they probably have a similar example here. So Bootstrap is another kind of framework that is really focusing on components. So it has all sorts of things, from buttons, from sliders, you name it, everything that you see in a web page is in there. So this is one of several such frameworks that you can use that provide you with components. So you can, for the previous version that is 4.5, it required jQuery. So you'll see that when we use it with Vue, up until last year, we didn't have a choice. I mean, we had a choice, but it was much more complicated to try to use the regular Bootstrap with Vue. as opposed to use something that takes out the jQuery, because the view provides you with basically the capabilities that you have already in jQuery. That is another library to do just to do HTML manipulation. And so here, the way you would use it with a framework is both to get component and also to style the whole page. And in these examples here, you have examples that include toolbars, and there is one that is a dashboard. That is this one that you see as already a chart in there and some data loaded. And here you have menus that don't do anything, but you see that they are mapping to different URLs. Here they all map to the same. That's why it is not changing page. But if you can take it and you can put it into your view, then you can map this to different view pages, and they have multiple dashboards, one side to side, that might do different things, right? That you can access through this menus. I think these buttons, they don't do anything either. This is a calendar. There is a calendar component also in there, and for some reason here they didn't get it out. So this is nice enough. So you might think that, okay, I'll go there and I'll scrape it out of here, which you can probably get quite a bit further along the way from here. But you see that it's already complicated here. We don't know where these pages are. It turns out that they're somewhere in here. Example dashboard. So there is an index that is here. There is a dashboard, and there is the JS and dashboard.css. The problem is that you see that they're in here, and then there is this other dist. And if you look carefully into these files, in the index, they will go and point and get stuff from this other folder that is one level up. So here you can do it and just scrape these one at a time and then go put them together. But it's much faster to just do what they tell you to do. Is that right? Yes. Okay, so that one was correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, we want to go to this page. To this page here. So you just stop at the main page, and you click on the so download source code. This is the all Bootstrap source code with all the components, which probably you don't care. If you just want the examples that are those that are in these pages, you go and you get the example. So here we are. So you get them in here. And you see that we have the dashboard here with the free files that we saw before, and there is I think it was the assets folder that has this dist in there. So you just basically get these two folders, and that will work. So if I double click this, we're going to see the same dashboard loaded locally. The data are included in the page, so it's not asking for anything outside of the browser. So it works right off the bat, right? And you know that that the data are in the page, because otherwise it wouldn't work, because we're not using a server here, right? Okay, so for the exercise, I think you just go, you create a folder with the same name, dashboard, and you copy these two subfolder from the files that you've downloaded in there. You just check that it works, and you add it to the repository, and you commit and push. And I think that's about it. The second part is just to add a grid display, which is basically just copying the code. You can add it anywhere in the page. It's just for you to see how to do it and how it works. Rather than to do that, because it's just copy and paste, I'd like to show you more the documentation from the page. So if I remember well, example. So I think this now we switch to the new one, maybe. Yeah, we switch to the new one, but for the other ones is I think they kept the same. Yeah. So if you click on docs, it's a little bit get a little bit lost, but in here they have the content and the components. So the components is usually what you want to go and use. The content is you know, shortcuts for text, images that are responsive, tables that are responsive, and so on. Oh, don't ask me why it disappeared there, but yeah, this is a Sankey diagram with D3. Okay, overview. Okay, so you have different ways of styling tables, and I think towards the bottom, it gets a little bit more complicated. There is no sortable table. For example, for view as sortable tables. Yeah, so you can do all sorts of things you can see with tables. And the components, sorry, I wanted to show you the grids. So the grids are on their layout. And the example I think is taken from here. So you have different ways of sizing depending on the size of the display. So you can decide that you may want one column to take a number of space among 12 based on display size. That is here defined in pixels. So XS is very small, SM is small, and so on. So you can configure those and basically have the column adapt based on the size. Most of the time, what you do is that you just use this type of layout for putting things in there, because you see that as you resize, the space resize proportionally. And so if you have a responsive chart in there, then if you put a responsive chart with the code that we just saw into one of these grids, then everything is going to be responsive, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. Now, most of the time, the responsiveness is might come just for free. The examples are a little bit more complicated because they change the form, right, and or the sampling. But if when you resize the window, by default the browser is going to emit this resize, and the content is going to handle it. And so Diffie, if your drawing code already is based on the size of the div in which you place the SVG in which you place your chart, the SVG gets resized. What is inside the SVG is going to get redrawn. And so Diffie is going to do the resize automatically for you, right? Because you're just resizing. Don't confuse with the examples that are changing things around, either showing or not showing element and so on. Okay, I think that this one is pretty much clear. So we're going now to go to 6. So this is Vue.js, and this is the last one. So here I show you, and I think we saw this already, how to use Vue to bootstrap a project. So you use what is called the Vue CLI. install it in this way. So this is for the latest incarnation of it. I think we use the same thing during the first week. And you remember that now that there is a new version of Vue. I think we should try to stick, if you don't, yeah, I mean, you can go with Vue 3, but all the examples that I here are, that I have are Vue 2. So if you are questioning whether you don't know Vue and you're just going by what I'm providing you, I would go with Vue 2 because you have already simple examples on how we're going to see to put charts in there so that it is not complicated to not more complicated to you, because they have a different mechanism in Vue 3 for doing a few of the things that you need to do in Vue. Yeah, so it's similar to what we're doing. They have this this in the package.json. You remember they have the serve script that is basically runs the CLI that runs a server similar to what we're doing for the pages for having the page refreshes whenever you're making changes. So if you want to add Bootstrap, you have two choices here. I'm showing you with the Bootstrap Vue, that is this version of Bootstrap for Vue. So if you go to the website, yeah, okay, good. You see it uses Bootstrap 4 for the reason that I told you before. So it's similar here. You see that what you get, but the components you find, we can see, for instance, the button. It looks exactly as the Bootstrap 4 version. The Bootstrap 5 is slightly different. But then you see that they use this HTML here, while we can compare with the Bootstrap button here. Where is it? Components button. So this is just straight HTML, and it's set up with this attribute here, type and classes. So the primary is the blue one, the secondary is this one, and so on. Here what they did is create new HTML elements. So remember that I told you that the frameworks, you can create their HTML like, or at least they have one part of it that is. And so here what we're doing is that we're creating a component that is a Vue component, that is the button. And so by default, you get the default of the Bootstrap button. So there is no such a thing as a B button in HTML. So when this is parsed by the Vue CLI, it says, oh, a B button, I know this is a component that is defined in this library. That is the Bootstrap Vue library that you're giving me a reference to. And so I know how to translate this into HTML. And that's all is happening there. Yeah. I mean, that's all. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But that's the basic idea. Okay. So with Vue 2, the examples that I have are using this Bootstrap Vue that you need to follow this recipe here to set up, and the result is what is in this Vue app that we're going to see in a minute. So I won't show it to you, but you can just go and look in this main.js how things look like. So yeah, before I get there, so this one is we're setting it up with what is called a router and Vuex. So those, sometimes you need them. So the router is what allows you to do URLs that are with slashes, and then that correspond to, say, different tabs in your dashboard. So when you click on a tab, you're going to go to the page that has to do with that. And so the router is the JavaScript component that does the mapping between the view files and the tabs that you're clicking on. So in this particular case, when you use the router, obviously you're going to have multiple pages. If you don't use the router, I think the default is to get a single page up. And we're going to see quickly how to use the router. The view X, this is every page, if you, in a multiple page app, it has its own views and controller and data. Yeah, files that are view files. They're just called .view. And each view file includes the three things. And because the data is in each one of the pages, it is not shared between different views. So if you need to load data that you're going to show in multiple pages, multiple views, then what you want to do is to use this view X, and that is a store. So this is a JavaScript object that you can tell it, okay, here is my data. I just got them from somewhere, and now put them in the store. And then in another page, you can say, hey, give me the data that I've put in the store earlier. So basically, that cuts on loading time, so you don't need to reload your data if you're reusing it. And yeah, so just selecting this option will give you that. Yeah, so this, I think here we have main, and this is because this is a single page app. Otherwise, there is app.js, I think. But the process is the same. You need basically to do this thing. So these are imports that basically import this view library into this page and into this view. Sorry, this controller that is this main.js. No, actually, I'm confusing you. The main is not related to the main page. We'll see this in a moment. This is the controller, I think, for the old app, because we want to use Bootstrap view throughout. So that's the place to put it. Yeah, this one is for using icons. If you want to use icons, because this Bootstrap, they come with a bunch of icons that are obviously most of the time useful. And then you need to import the CSS. So this is basically doing the same mechanism that you do in HTML to import JavaScript. But when you're in JavaScript, which this file is main.js, then you need to one mechanism at least is to use the import to import either other JavaScript or other CSS. Okay, so Axios here is you just install it and then you can use it. So this is just an HTTP object that allows you to fetch data to do HTTP requests. So we know how to use d3.js, but say if you want to do a chart with HTML and you don't want to use d3, then you can use Axios. The advantage of using d3 is when you really want to do a chart that allows you to format the data. If you do Axios, it's going to return whatever you get as what gets shipped by the server, And so you don't get, if it's a CSV file, all this parsing for the CSV, you just get all your chunk of CSV at once, and then it's up to you to deal with it. But sometimes it's useful, so that's why I put it in there. This we didn't do, we did last year. So last year we had, for each one of the projects, students basically build an app and then deploy. So this is needed because when you develop, you generate this HTML that you can interact with. But once you're done, you just want the bunch of minified files and go put them on a server. And so all the framework, they have this step that is the build and deploy step, where you use the CLI here to run a script that is the build script that generates a chunk of files that are minified. So usually what happens there is that you have some main.js file that has a cryptic name, and everything is minified inside, and a main index file that is a minimal file that has just the entry point to the rest of the functionality that generates on the fly the website. Now these files, because they're set up so that you can just go and put them on a server, the CLI has this, I mean, you can use another web server to just start it from the command line, and this is the one that Vue recommends to install. So here I'm using the -G because it means globally. So you install it once within PM, and then you can do this anywhere. So once you build this thing, your app, then it goes into a dist folder. So you can try to do this thing, and you'll see what happens. So this year, I don't know if we're going to do that, but probably you'll want to make sure that that this runs, so that we can just go and slap this into a web server and test quickly the project, as opposed to have to go through the Visual Studio Code and do the npm install and npm serve. We just have the finished product. Yeah, and then that will probably save you time, because to go and do these things on the servers is always painful. Okay, so the last thing here is just a little exercise, and yeah, I think I asked the TA to add the code even for the exercise, so you don't get too involved into it. But let me show you the app, and then how it runs, and yeah, you'll tell me in Slack if you have code for this, because I think this is the solution, and the solution didn't have it. Okay. So we'll go in the solution. So this should be similar actually to yours in terms of what you have. Where is it? View up. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is just I created here. If you really want to debug this inside Visual Studio Code, then you can use this. And the Vue website as an explanation, but it's already set up if you want to. But most of the time, really, you don't do this. You set it up so that I think it's done. I think it's the Vue config that is doing. Yeah. So this is the line that does the magic. So this is the line that does insert that your minified code is going to map to actually the source code in the browser, And so you can go in the browser and see things as you would expect it. This stuff here was for the deployment because we had different paths on the server, obviously, for each one of the team. But yeah, don't worry too much about that. We'll see if we do that, or we will skip it. These files here, they don't come normally by default. And probably you only have this one, this env.example. So this is used commonly both on this on Node application such as the view there, and also on in the browser apps Node application and the browser apps to define variables. So here, for instance, I put my key for Mapbox. That is a tool that we're going to see there for doing maps. So if you want to put yours, you know, everyone as is, then you don't want to commit this in the repository because you might work with other in your group that have their own key. So locally, you take this example file, you create a .m from it, and you put there your variable. So whenever we're going to play with Mapbox, you'll see how to do this. The rest of the files are basically the usual things that you would expect, including some information here that we already see on how to run and serve the view. Now, the famous files that are the files that view handles that are going to be used to generate are here. And you have two types of these. One are the components, so these are reusable, you remember? And then you have the views that are meant to be used as pages. And the views can use components. So here we created a bar chart view and a hello world view. That is the default that comes when you create it, that we can open it. And the first thing that you'll want to do is to install the plugin. I think it's in, that is called Vetour here. And you get this error messages if yeah, there is a way to disable this. It just wants you to tell him basically if you're using TypeScript or not. So we need to add a file in the main location here. Yeah, we're done. So with time, but so we'll finish this up on Monday. But I think that you can do most of this already. This example should work as you have it. It should have most of the code except from the little exercises that you have in there. So try to do it. If you see that you spend more than 10 minutes figuring it out, put it in Slack so we send you the pieces of code that are missing. And then we'll finish a little bit of the tour of this on Monday to make sure that you get to the point that you would be able, this becomes a viable option for a framework for the project.